All right, Mountain TV. We're with Brian from the CAIC, Colorado Avalanche Information Center. Brian, we got through that busy MLK weekend. It was a lot of avalanche danger. Things may be looking a little bit better going into this next weekend, right?
Yeah, and I got to say, we were really relieved to get through the holiday weekend
Yeah.
with no bad accidents. So people are making good decisions out there, and I am really grateful for that.
Hey, Brian, and listen, that's partly because of you guys. I know you put on a full court press to really get the word out with so many people, so much snow, and it looks like all those efforts really worked.
Yeah, we'll take the win on this one for sure. And so, here's where we're kind of sat coming out of Martin Luther King weekend. You
Okay.
can still see that due to all the snowfall, we had a large portion of our mountains, nearly all of them really at considerable or level 3 out of 5 danger. And if you look at kind of the avalanche activity that's taken place since around January 12th, you can see we had this uptick right over the holiday weekend. And this was due to essentially all that storm snow.
Right.
If I kind of show you what that storm actually looked like, you can see that we got quite a bit of snow out of this holiday storm.
Well, it was a big storm, Brian. I know you're trying to pull all this up. I mean, big storm. And you were saying earlier that in some areas we're at 150% of snowpack right now.
Yeah, and I'll show you that in just a second. But here's the snow that came over that holiday weekend. So in these areas that are hitting the reds and the pinks, and even into the whites, we were measuring snow in feet. So this is what kept the avalanche danger elevated through Martin Luther King weekend. And what this has done to our snowpack is pretty nice, actually. You can see these blue areas. We're at over 150% of long-term median. We're at 130 to 50% in the headwaters of the Colorado River and the Gunnison. The only river drainage that's sitting below long-term median is the Arkansas River Valley. And it's because we've got less snow in the upper headwaters there. And I'll show you that in just a second. If we back out and kind of just look at what snowpack looks like as a statewide average, this is the amount of snow water equivalent on the ground here on the y-axis. This green line is our long-term median, 30-year median. And this black line is this season. So you can see I put the blue line on here from last season. And again, we had really snowy, kind of Christmas through New Year's periods. And you can see those lines tracked pretty well. Anyone who was around last year remembers then we had a really long kind of 4 to 6 week drought, which lasted through a large portion of January and February. So far, that's not happening here. Our black line continues to increase, and our statewide average is about 134% of long-term median. So this is really good for the snowpack. And then as we move into the weekend, you can see we've got a little bit of a trough that rolls through on Saturday and Sunday, but that's only going to drop around 3 to 6 inches for most mountain locations. And that's just not going to be enough to keep the avalanche danger elevated. So what we can expect as we move into, Friday and into the weekend is more portions of Colorado reaching level 2 out of 5 or moderate avalanche danger. And this is not as dangerous as it has been in quite some time. But I do want to point out that there's some variation across the state that's worth diving into a little bit. And I put together this map to kind of illustrate the point. So these these circles here are weather stations that measure snow, or snow tell stations. And we can really break down the snowpack across the state into kind of 3 main bins. So in these purple areas, we've got snow on the ground that's deeper than about 7 feet. In some places, it's over 10 feet deep. And in these purple areas, like up in the Park Range and the flat tops close to Steamboat, in the western portion of the Elk Mountains near Schofield Pass, out onto the Grand Mesa, Uncompadre Plateau, and then the western and southeastern portions of the San Juan Mountains, our snowpack is deep enough that those weak layers from early in the season that are near the ground are getting very difficult for us to impact them as people traveling over the snow surface. On the other end of that spectrum, you can see we've got this big orange circle, and this is essentially the headwaters of that Arkansas River drainage. And we've got pretty thin snow cover in here. In fact, it's thin enough that we don't have a cohesive slab sitting on top of those weak layers. We just have weak snow throughout.
Interesting.
And the avalanche danger is less in those locations.
And it is that mid-level, Brian, that I know there's kind of 3 classifications here. This just makes a ton of sense, I think, to me and our viewers. But what that mid-level is the one that you guys are most concerned about, correct?
Yeah, and we highlighted those with these green circles. So these are the areas that have these snowpack depths of around 5 feet, give or take. And that is enough to have a cohesive slab of snow sitting on the weak layers from early in the season that are near the ground, but that's not deep enough to put them out of range for human triggering. So in these green areas, which includes all of the Front Range, areas through Summit County, including areas around the Aspen and Crested Butte ski areas and east towards Taylor Park. And then notably, and a new addition to this list after the MLK storms and the snowfall that fell the early part of this work week is the areas around the La Garita Mountains and Lake City. And this is kind of that Goldilocks zone. The snowpack is deep enough that we've got slabs sitting over weak layers near the ground, but it's not deep enough to put those out of range for human triggering. And so in these green areas, that's where we're most worried about people triggering kind of these large and dangerous avalanches, which are really kind of hard to predict. And,
and as you said, we got through that MLK weekend and unscathed for the most part. Just amazing. And again, thanks so much to you guys for getting the word out statewide and looking a little better going into this weekend. So the trend, at least for now, is good. We appreciate this so much, Brian. We'll see you back in next week for another update. And don't forget, guys, go to the website. The website is super cool, super easy to use. Most of this information is right there as well. So we really encourage you to take some time and go check that out.
Yeah, thanks for your time, Scott. And like we said, there's big variations across the state depending on which one of those three things you're going to. Are you going to the deep areas, the shallow areas, or the Goldilocks zone? And you're going to want to get those details at colorado.gov/avalanche.
Okay, we're on it. Thanks so much. We'll see you in a week, Brian.
Thanks, Scott.
Mountain TV.